We're incredibly excited to have Chip Conley on this week's episode of the Midlife Mentors podcast. Chip is CEO and founder of the Modern Elder Academy, a school dedicated to helping people navigate midlife and beyond, and turn the midlife crisis into a midlife calling.
Chip is a hospitality entrepreneur, New York Times bestseller, and with 2,000 alumni from 30 countries, he's on a mission to create a global movement of curious and wise midlifers. This is such an inspiring podcast, and we know you're going to love it. Hi, I'm James Davis.
And I'm Claire Davis.
We're the Midlife Mentors, here to lift the lid on how to achieve health and happiness.
The balanced, no-nonsense way.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Midlife Mentors with me, James.
And me, Claire. How are you all?
Well, we've got an exciting episode for you today. We're joined by no other than Chip Conley of the Modern Elder Movement. So we'll be speaking to him in just a second.
So excited for this one. But what have we been up to in the last week? Well, we've been prepping for our 4-day mini course. It's the third time we're running it. So it's optimizing hormone health and hacking your metabolism. It's got the most phenomenal results for people the last couple of times we've done it, and we just can't wait to share it with you again. That starts on the 19th of September. Now, just to say this out loud, James and I were wondering whether to postpone that. Given the day, it's the Queen's funeral, very, very sad day. We didn't know whether to not run it or to run it, but we thought it's actually going to be early in the morning here in the UK that we're running our little lives. So we thought it might be a good way to connect with each other and to support each other. And so that was our decision. We're going to carry on running it on the 19th. So Monday the 19th, and it runs for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So I'll put the link in the show notes for that. I was going to say,
don't forget, if you can't make the early morning session, the workshops stay live for the whole of the challenge. So you can go back there. You're going to get your materials emailed out to you as well. We would love you to join us.
Yeah, this is for you, if you're, and this applies to so many of us, if you're in your 40s, 50s and beyond, and you're experiencing anxiety that comes with all the hormone changes, anxiety, stubborn weight gain, low confidence, and just not really feeling yourself. So James and I can't wait to dive into the science around why that's happening and give you like really practical steps that really shift the needle on that. So super excited. And I think that's about all we've been up to, really.
It wasn't long since we did the last one, it feels like. So without further ado, let's introduce Chip. Chip, welcome.
Hello.
Great to be with the two of you, and yeah, I'm sorry, so sorry about the Queen. She what an icon she's been for 70 years.
Yeah.
It's amazing, a 70-year reign. It's mind-blowing to think, most people in this country have never known anything different.
It's you can really feel the energy in the country and actually around the world. But in London, obviously, we're based in central London, and you can really feel the energy of it. It's super sad. And like James said, it's all we've ever known. It's been a female, I think, as well. It's the fact that it's not female.
Yes. I think, as let's bring this to sort of our conversation. Generally, we talk about men as they get older becoming silver foxes. But women, we don't call them silver vixens. And actually, a vixen is a female fox, because vixen actually has sort of the sexual connotation attached to it. And generally, in the entertainment or media world, women after age 50, are sort of have limited options. And actually, even in the dating pool, in the heterosexual dating pool, same thing. So to see a woman, reign over the Commonwealth for 70 years, to do it in a way that created stability in a very unstable time, to do it with, while she was not perfect, and I think that was the beauty of her, and the fact that she actually expressed it as a woman more easily can than a man because of the socialization. She could express the kinds of emotions that you normally wouldn't see from royalty. She could even, get a do-over when it came to Diana. I mean, there was elements that, that say, gosh, this is a role model, not for a queen, but for a human. And I think we need more role models that come from the feminine world, in a world that could use more of that. So I think it's, from a longevity perspective, I think the idea that we have these older women who can show us the evolutionary value of grandmothers as well. There's so much research on that. There's less research that shows grandfathers are helpful in an evolutionary way. There's a lot more on grandmothers. So let's dive in though. You have questions.
Yeah, but
do.
It's really interesting. I just want to cover something that you've just said there, because it is, obviously we work with an age group of women where we're going through the peri-menopause and menopause, and that's the age group that we work with, and there are lots of challenges around that time. There are lots of challenges hormonally for men as well, but for us women, and what you're saying to the point there about, for women it feels like it can feel like it's all downhill, and that we're being put on the shelf and we're losing our sense of identity through our body, and in society it's kind of reinforced, like you said, that it's after 50, it's kind of, it's very limited options. And I think what we want to champion, as a woman really wants to champion, is actually it's our wisdom. It's the wisdom that comes with age. And we've talked a lot about the hag has really negative connotations now, but actually in our ancestors it was the wise woman that held all the knowledge, that was then the kind of gatekeeper to all of that for all of the community. She was very, very important and very powerful and revered. So it's only now it's kind of where we talk about the menopause and all of that, where it's like, oh, it's awful, it's all terrible. And actually the flip side of that is it's phenomenal. It's an amazing time for us women.
Well, I think the U-curve of happiness research is pretty conclusive across almost all cultures. And it has shown that between 45 and 50, we tend to bottom out in terms of our happiness or life satisfaction. And there are a lot of reasons for that. And then starting in one's 50s, with each passing decade, we get happier and happier. So 50 is better than 40, 60 is better than 50, 70 is better than 60s, and women in their 80s better than their 70s. In the last 2 or 3 years of someone's life, that does actually start to decline again a little bit for all kinds of health and reasons associated with knowing that you're facing death. But the fact is that we actually do get happier, both men and women, as we get older, after hitting what I like to call the midlife chrysalis, not the midlife crisis. So if you think about the history or what we learned in biology as kids, you had the caterpillar to butterfly journey, and then there were 3 stages. There's the caterpillar stage where you're accumulating, eating your leaves and doing everything like that, and then inexplicably one day you start spinning a chrysalis on a twig, and you hang yourself upside down so you can liquefy yourself and go through a transformation that on the other side of that is a butterfly. So the 3 stages, very clearly the second stage is midlife, the midlife of the caterpillar to butterfly journey. And so that's why I like to say that, well, yes, we go through some difficult times in our 40s, and especially maybe for many people in the second half of our 40s. I know for me, that was the worst time of my life. But what I can say quite conclusively is the data is pretty clear that on the other side of that crisis, or I will call it the chrysalis, the midlife chrysalis, there is a better life ahead of you. And it's partly because of the wisdom, as you spoke about. It's partly because just as we get comfortable in our own skin, it starts to sag, but we get less fixated on our bodies, less worried about what other people think about us, more clear about and more discerning about what is important in our lives. And for all those reasons, and a bunch of other ones, emotional intelligence grows, our ability to think holistically, systemically grows, our primary operating system moves from the ego to the soul. All of those things happen. And I'm not just talking, out of my arse here. I am talking from the perspective of this is social science research. And that's part of the reason ultimately I wanted to create the Modern Elder Academy, to create an institute and a place where people can come or go online and learn about what gets better with age, so that we can actually look at midlife as not, a jail sentence, but as a time to start to cultivate and harvest our wisdom. So that's why MEA is the world's first midlife wisdom school.
I love that. Absolutely love everything you said there, Chip, and it really resonates.
Just grinning from ear to ear.
And part of the reason we started doing what we're doing was because I'm 50 this year, but we start to see our friends in midlife, not so much clients we're working with, but friends just be like, oh, well, this is it. This is the beginning of the end. I've got to accept just, the expanding waistline, the low energy. And I was like, no, it does not need to be
the low
this
libido.
way. There's so much you can be doing to like embrace this second act with joy, So it's amazing what you're doing. You've kind of explained there a little bit about the Modern Elder. We'll go into that a little bit more. Could you just tell us briefly about your career path? It's quite fascinating. You're a best-selling author. You've won a ton of awards. We've got an amazing career in hospitality before you came into this.
Yeah. So when I was, I'm from the U.S. and from California, and went to Stanford University and Stanford Business School. Got my MBA there. A couple years out of business school, I started a boutique hotel company. Now, Europe is much more familiar with the boutique hotel movement than the U.S. So I was doing this in the mid 1980s when it was starting to just take off in the United States. And I called my company Joie de Vivre, means joy of life in French. And over the next 24 years, I ran this company, created 52 boutique hotels around California. And I loved it until I hated it. And in my midlife chrysalis, between 45 and 49, oh man, I had a terrible time. Everything that could go wrong was going wrong. I also had an NDE, near-death experience, where I actually did die and came back to life 9 times in 90 minutes, and because of an allergic reaction to an antibiotic I was on. And it was, I didn't, when I looked at that era of my life, I said midlife sucks, And then what happened is I got to the other side of it, and I realized that there were a bunch of identities or ways of thinking and mindsets that I just needed to get rid of. And I didn't really have any schools or tools to deal with this. I just fortunately had a British best friend named Vanda, who was a life coach and, very close friend of mine who helped me through that time. Unfortunately, I lost 5 friends to suicide during that time, all men aged 42 to 52. This is all during the Great Recession of 2008 to 2010. I sold my company at the bottom of the Great Recession, and then wrote my 4th book, which was called Emotional Equations. And it was really my story of going through what I went through and trying to understand the logic of my emotions during that time. And then it was around that time after the book came out when the 3 founders of Airbnb approached me and said, hey, you know a lot about hospitality and travel. We have this little tech startup here in San Francisco, and we don't necessarily know what we're doing, but it's growing and we could use you. This was 10 years ago. And I didn't really know much about Airbnb at the time. Long story short is for 7.5 years, I helped steer the rocket ship with the founders to help create what is now the most valuable hospitality company in the world. And during that time, they called me the Modern Elder, and I didn't like that a whole lot, but it was true though. I was 52 when I started with them. And the average age in the company was 26. So I was twice the age of the average employee. I was reporting to Brian, one of the co-founders, who's CEO. And he was 31 and I was 52, but I was also mentoring him. He asked me to be the in-house mentor. So that was unusual. So they called me the Modern Elder because they said, Chip, you are as curious as you are wise. And I was like, wow, well, if that's what a Modern Elder is, thank you. It didn't like the term initially, but I was like, wow, okay. And so in those 7.5 years, I mentored over 100 employees in the company all over the world. And that led me to writing my 5th book, Wisdom at Work, The Making of a Modern Elder. And while I was writing that book, I had this epiphany, this Baja aha because I was living in Baja, writing on the beach. And I said, why is it that we don't have schools or tools or rites of passage or rituals to help people through midlife and to help them to understand what's on the other side of it? And maybe reframe people's relationship with aging. And that's how MEA, Modern Elder Academy, came about. And we now have had 3,000 alumni from 40 countries, and we have 26 regional chapters around the world. So you said at the start that the Modern Elder movement, it sort of is a movement, and been just thrilling to see people come from all over the world to experience our programs. And now we are opening a couple of campuses in the US as well. But also a lot of people access us by our website because we have online courses on purpose and transitions and things like that.
So could you, it's absolutely, I love all this. It's everything you've just said is just, I'm sitting here grinning, listening to you, because it really resonates. And I know it will with our listeners on such a deep level. And I think if you're happy to share, what would be the kind of experience that someone might experience if they came to one of the academy or one of your live events, or what would you say is the main outtake for them, and what do they experience?
Well, let me explain the curriculum and what that leads to. So it's a midlife wisdom school. So the umbrella that defines our program is how to cultivate and harvest wisdom at any age. The 4 pillars of our program, which come from social science, are how to reframe aging, because Dr. Becca Levy at Yale, who's been a big fan of MEA, has proven that if you can actually shift your mindset on aging from a negative to a positive, you gain 7.5 years of additional life. And that's usually a pretty good life if you have a positive perspective on aging. So reframing your relationship with aging is really important. It's actually more important to your longevity than stopping smoking or starting exercising at age 50, shockingly. The second pillar of the program is how do you shift from a fixed to a growth mindset? This is really important as we get older, based upon Carol Dweck's work and her book Mindset, because if you have a fixed mindset as you get older, not only do you get, frankly, more cranky and cantankerous, but you also give yourself less options. You are less willing to become a beginner again. And quite frankly, again, if you are in the caterpillar chrysalis butterfly journey, once you're a butterfly, you got to learn how to fly. And so being a beginner in midlife is not a bad thing, and learning how to do that. And I would say that's probably one of the 2 most profound elements of our week-long workshops is how do people come and get comfortable becoming a beginner again, based upon our very experiential, immersive program. We do not have PowerPoints. We do not have handouts. We do have a 160-page workbook that people take with them, but it's very much experiential. The third pillar speaks to the idea of navigating midlife transitions. And as you talked about with menopause, or the more subtle andropause for men, that's a physical hormonal transition. But gosh, we have so many transitions in midlife. Our parents may pass away. If we have children, we may become empty nesters. We may get divorced. We may actually change our career or where we live. We may have a health diagnosis. I found out I'm 62 as of October, but I found out at 57 that I had prostate cancer. So, these are the kinds of things we learn. So there's a lot of transitions that happen in midlife. Re-engaging with spirituality or religion is something that happens for a lot of people around midlife. Long story short is we have not done any training to help us to master these midlife transitions. So we call this TQ, transitional intelligence, and how do we help people to go through the transitions that are often very natural. And then the fourth pillar of our program is called regeneration, because retirement is what we sort of have been baked into our culture about, like, okay, you get to this age and then you retire. And yet most people don't really love the word retire, because frankly, the etymology of the word means to be forced into seclusion, to withdraw into seclusion. And that's not exactly what you want to do at 55 or 65 or 75 or maybe even 85. So regeneration is an alternative way to look at it, which is like, how do I constantly renew myself? And how do I renew myself by giving back? How do I do it by actually making a difference in my community? Regenerative agriculture and farming and ranching is woven into our program because we have regenerative communities where people actually live. So long story short is, I'd say two key things here. I've told you one of them, and I'll tell you the second one now. Clearly, one of the things a person gets out of this program is the idea that they have more options available to them, and that a growth mindset or a beginner's mindset is not something that's only something you do in your adolescence. You can do that in your middlescence as well, which is a new term. The second thing I think that people really get out of the program is a deeper sense of the importance of community. And whether that's true in the online program too, that's the part that's been a big surprise for us, is that in our 8-week online programs, people feel a deep sense of community there too. But of course, in person, when you're in a workshop with 20 people for a week, wow, you have just met friends that you may have for the rest of your life. And we now are almost 5 years in terms of how long we've been open. And we have workshop cohorts that 4.5 years later still do weekly Zoom calls to connect and to encourage and to support. Because for a lot of these folks, they're coming to the program in the midst of a transition or an anticipated transition. And frankly, their friends or their family is resisting the transition. Because often when we're making a change in our life, the dynamic systemically is that people around us feel like they have to make changes in their lives. And sometimes people don't want to do that. So having a safe, comfortable, supportive group of people who know your story and are going to be, there to be your emotional insurance, your safety net during a time that can feel like you're on the high wire act at a circus is important, because these are the people who encourage you to continue to make the changes you want to make in your life.
I love all that. I'm getting excited just hearing you talk
I know.
about it. And so much there resonates. Like
the risk adverse.
It's funny. Like we always say to our clients, when you're young, you play to win. But as you get older, you play not to lose.
Yeah.
And it's a very different mindset. We become more risk averse. Our ego is more developed. So we don't want to be like foolish by trying to learn something and being a beginner again.
And the ego takes over.
Yeah.
We're coming, and it's that self-identity piece, isn't it? I identify as this person, and then when we go through these transitions, they kind of knock the ego side of what we have set ourselves up to be. And like you've said, all the way through this, it can feel incredibly unsettling, and those people sometimes they'll really resist it until it comes. Well, they might resist it for their entire life and have quite a hard time with it all, or they'll resist it to a point where the universe goes, no, you really can't ignore this anymore. And then they move into the caterpillar stage. But I think, and also what you said there about people around you resisting the change, and some friendships, we have this conversation a lot, friendships fall away, or partnerships can fall away because you're shining a light on the things that you want to change, and they might not have the courage or the introspection to want to do the same. So they're like, oh, I don't want to see that. I don't want to see it. And I know even from myself, I'm only 43, but I've experienced that shift as I've grown. I've definitely seen a falling away of certain long-term friendships, and to a degree some family connections, because we're all on that different path, and that can be really, like you've said, really, really hard for people. So having that community and that support, like you said, is so powerful. And even on an online course, you can really feel that sense of community.
Well, there's a common ethos sort of that bonds the people who have gone through one of our MEA programs, and that's why we have reunions. We have all kinds of programs that allow people to get to know those beyond their cohort. Yes, the cohort is a group of people who maybe from all over the world, and you stay in touch with them because they know your story and you've been through a week with them. But then you go back to, for example, London, and we have, I think, over 50 people in the UK who've come to Baja and done our programs. So you go back, and now there's a group of people who you can say, oh, remember what happens on Monday night? And I'm not going to tell you right now, because a lot of what we try to do is meant to not surprise, but to help people to not have to be in control of their week's time. And so that they have the commonality of a ritual or a rite of passage that is woven into our experiential education program in such a way that they understand what you've gone through. It's sort of like having gone to summer camp with somebody a long time ago and then like reminiscing about it. There's an element of bonding that comes from that. So, the UK has a minister of loneliness. I don't know if that's still the case, because that was back in the pre-COVID, but frankly, post-COVID, it's probably even more necessary.
Yeah. Well, actually, we did a live the other day. It was on Saturday, and we did it was about what ages us. So obviously we dived into some of the stuff that we talk about a lot around nutrition and gut health and movement. But one of the other things is a lack of connection. Like a lack of human connection. And there was, again, a lot of research around when COVID hit. It was that was so bad for our physical and mental health, was the cutting off, because, as a human race, we are designed to connect with each other and be part of a community. It's in our DNA.
Well, it's not just it is in our DNA, and pretty much every longevity research project that looks at what are the variables that allow people to live deeper, more meaningful, and longer lives has shown that the most common variable across the blue zones, Dan Buettner's work, who's actually teaching at MEA this coming year in 2023, or Phil Pizzo's work at Stanford, where he's shown purpose, wellness, and community are the most important, or the longitudinal study from Harvard that has studied, a group of men, unfortunately not women, over the course of 70 years. The most common variable is community, is social or relational capital, and there's a lot of reasons for that, but it is so. One of the things I would just say to people is, wow, especially men. Women are so much better at this because women are socialized early in life to be vulnerable and to, talk about their feelings with their friends, etc. I feel so badly. Part of the reason I created MEA was because, when you lose 5 friends to suicide in 2.5 years, and they're all men in midlife, something's wrong. And in fact, in the US, I don't know about the UK, but in the US, the suicide rate for people in 45 to 65 is 60% higher today than it was 20 years ago. So, and suicide rate across the whole culture has gone up, but around midlife, it's actually gone up even faster. And so a lot of that has to do with feeling like there's nobody who understands what you're going through. And the truth is, so much of what we go through in midlife is sort of normal. It's not easy, and the circumstances are painful at times, but it's not abnormal. And what we have to do is help, especially men, realize that some of what they're going through is normal, and their friends are going through it, but they're not talking about it. And menopause for women, so many women don't talk about this. Like, come on, like there's a really important body change that's going on.
Yeah.
And you're not talking about it.
Yeah. I would think actually, because we've done some stuff with menopause over in the US, some workshops, like online workshops. And it's really fascinating because some of the women in the US are like, I can't believe like how leaps and bounds ahead of the US, the UK is for menopause in the workplace and talking about this. Which is fascinating to me, actually, because, and it's great. It's being talked about a lot, but what isn't being talked about so much is the andropause. And obviously you're going into organizations now, corporate settings, and talking about the andropause.
Unfortunately, the stats are very similar here. The highest suicide group is middle-aged men over in the UK.
Yeah. God, I've gained 50, COVID was part of it, but I'm a healthy person. I'm athletic. I walk my 10,000 steps on average every day. I swim, I do yoga, etc. But man, have I gained, a couple inches around my waist in the last 5 to 7 years, that no matter how much exercise I do, clearly some of it's diet too. And I need to not have my Guinness occasionally. Guinness is not good for your waistline. That is for sure.
The old ads, Guinness is good for you. Not sure.
Yeah.
I like a Guinness every now and again.
He loves a Guinness.
I do like a pint, just tipping a pint back and like, oh my
Yeah.
God. I lived in the UK my junior year of college, and I just love it there. So I have a lot of envy for the fact that you're there.
Oh, we love London. We do love London.
Yeah.
It's a fab place. But yeah, it's and hormonal changes. But like you said, guys don't talk about it so much, and you know,
Or they, not only they don't talk about it, they don't even know about it. At least for women, menopause is something that, yes, you know, in the US women don't talk about it a lot, but at least they know what's going on. Men actually don't know what's going on. They don't even know that there's actually, yes, maybe they've heard a little bit about the fact that their libido potentially goes down. It doesn't have to, but maybe they've heard about that, and that's why they have their blue pills. I mean, there's that, but there's so much more to andropause than just libido, and there's lots of examples of people men whose libidos go up at that age, or their sensuality goes up. Because that's another piece. It's like men tend to be, now we're going to get into sexuality for a second. Men tend to be very focused on like performance, you know, when it comes to sexuality. And there's an element of like, wow, how do I move out of the performance era of my sexual life into the sensuous, loving part of my, you know, romantic and sexual life? And it's like, oh, that's a big change. And for a lot of men, it's like, oh, what a relief. And some men, I wrote a blog post called "Being Released from Testosterone Prison," because, you know, when you have prostate cancer, sometimes what your body naturally does is it shuts down its testosterone, because testosterone is what's fueling the cancer in your prostate. And so I had been a randy, crazy, you know, sexually very active single person in my early to mid 50s. And then in my later 50s, something just shut off. And it was turns out it was the prostate cancer and the testosterone. But there was also a relief I felt when I was like, oh man, I don't have to just be acting like an adolescent in terms of how I think of my sexuality. And, you know, and women, you know, particularly appreciate when men move beyond their adolescent sexuality.
Yeah. And it's so true. But again, who really talks about that? And, you know, it is the awareness piece, isn't it?
I think for men, it's, I mean, you touched on it there. Men are terrible. I think all the research says, you know, they're not as good at socializing. They have less like deep friendships. And actually the research is saying like now compared to generations before, they have even less like meaningful relationships with friends. And even if they do have them, they're not so great at being vulnerable and opening up and talking about these things. No. It's a big education piece to be done there.
I'm very excited because we have Esther Perel coming to MEA next year with her husband to do a workshop on all of this. She's pretty amazing, and so one of the collateral benefits of doing what I'm doing as, you know, founder and CEO of MEA is I get to meet lots of interesting people.
I bet.
Just like you do doing a podcast. And yeah.
Oh, fantastic. I think what you're doing is amazing. I absolutely love it. And it's so necessary for all the reasons we've discussed. You've just brought another book out. I don't know where you find the time to write all these, Chip. Wisdom at Work. And it's about becoming indispensable. I guess it's that regeneration part, you know, if your, in inverted commas, career has finished, you know, what do you do next? Obviously people can go and get the book, but what was your inspiration for writing that? And what are some of the key lessons people could take from it?
The inspiration was really my experience being the modern elder at MEA. I'm sorry, not MEA, at Airbnb. And realizing, wow, we have a real opportunity to create an intergenerationally collaborative workplace like never before. In the past, basically, you know, the power rested with the older people, and the younger people just did all the grunt work, and that's changed. You know, I had a boss who was 21 years younger than me, who I was mentoring. That's not going to be as unusual in the future as it is today. But in the US, over 40% of Americans have a younger boss. And by the year 2025, the US Department of Labor projects that actually the average American will have a younger boss. So long story short is we are in an era where we're going to have to learn how to, as we get older, learn what we can get better at and how we can have relevance in the workplace. In the past, we thought of our elders as it was about reverence, but that doesn't exist except for in certain cultures in the world today. And instead of reverence, it's really about relevance. And so how do we stay relevant using the curiosity and the wisdom as we get older? And then how do we help foster more collaborative relationships across generations in the workplace moving forward? Because that's really, hopefully, how we'll solve some of the more vexing problems of the world. It's not going to be just one generation solving it.
Amazing.
Oh, I love that. Love that.
So, Chip, if people would like to learn more about the modern elder, I mean,
come to Baha or do one of your online courses.
Listening to this, why wouldn't you, is all I would say. Where can they go to learn more about your books, your courses, your workshops?
Yeah, three different ideas. modernelderacademy.com is our website. So you just do a Google search and you'll find Modern Elder Academy. And there's all of our programs listed there. I have a website called chipconley.com, Conley. And then I have a daily blog called Wisdom Well, and it is free. If you're a subscriber, you just say, I want to subscribe, and we send you an email once a day, a little microdose of wisdom. And that I tend to post those on my LinkedIn profile as well as in other social media, but the LinkedIn profile is where most people get active with that. So you can take a look at the Wisdom Well blog and just know that every single day I put something out there.
Oh man, I'm going to go and subscribe to that straight afterwards. And listeners, we'll put all these links in the show notes as well.
Of course.
So put those in the show
and
notes for
finally, what's coming up for you in your world? Have you got anything that's coming up? Any exciting plans? I bet you have.
Oh, there's always exciting plans. I mean, the fact that we're going to be building 2 huge campuses in the U.S. in the Santa Fe, New Mexico area, it's exciting and scary at the same time, because we believe that there's a need that's way beyond what we do in Baja. So that's, I think, what's really most on my mind. And I'm working on a new book that I can't talk about yet, but it's but the whole relevance of this book is to help people to see the unexpected pleasures of midlife and beyond. So
well, what a perfect way to wrap that up. That's a perfect line to finish on. Chip,
thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. I know that will be so great for our audience as well. All those things there. Listeners, we've got the links in the show notes. Do go and check all of this stuff
out. We are 100%. We'll be coming over to you 100%. Okay, thank you so much.
At some point, you'll be teaching. We'll have you on faculty.
We'd love to be teaching. Yes. Thank you so much.
Yeah. You've been listening to the Midlife Mentors with Claire and James Davis.
We'd love to hear from you. So drop us a line at info@themidlifementors.com with any questions or topic suggestions.
And make sure you join us on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. You can find us under the Midlife Mentors. Yeah.